Joining us right now to talk markets, Allianz and Gramercy advisor Mohammed El-Erian. He's also the president of Queen's College, Cambridge. And Mohammed, earlier this morning we were talking to Mark Grant, and he has a somewhat contrarian view. He thinks that even with all this inflation pressure that's been building, the Fed is going to stand pat, that they won't do anything to even taper until 2023. What do you think?
So the Fed certainly is showing absolutely no hesitation in reasserting its conviction that inflation is transitory. So short term, I don't think the Fed moves at all. It will need unambiguous evidence that we've turned. And then by the time it gets it, it has to go through a whole cycle. So I know where he's coming from, and I have sympathy. Whether it extends as far as 2023, I'm not sure. You know, I'm of the view that these supply disruptions, these bottlenecks that have to do with raw material, other imports, and labor are not going away anytime soon. So I think the Fed will be put in a much more difficult situation than what Mark thinks going up to over the next 2 years.
What was the words that you put air quotes around? The Fed is dealing with what?
So there are also all sorts of bottlenecks that the Fed is dealing with, right? But in its mind, it is absolutely convinced. It has expressed this incredible conviction. It is transitory. Inflation is transitory. It keeps on repeating it, despite all the evidence we're getting. Now, it's not just macro evidence. You show what the Michigan inflation expectations, they've moved significantly higher 1 year and 5 years. But it's also all the evidence we're getting from companies. The thing I'm hearing most common from company CEOs is we're having problems securing inputs, and we're looking to increase prices and wages. What Amazon and McDonald's did is going to be part of a much bigger phenomenon of higher wages.
Yeah, I think you're right. No question, inflation is here. Whether it's transitory or not, I guess, is to be seen. But he thinks the Fed would never admit it, but that they are going to have to keep rates low, however, by whatever means, whether that means, not raising rates, but whether that means continuing to pour money into the Treasury markets, just because when you look at the amount of spending that we're doing right now, the amount of debt that we're racking up, there's no way we can service that debt as a nation if interest rates rise. What do you think?
So I think he's right in the short term, and I think that's why you see the 10-year yield where it is, even though other indication of inflations are all migrating up. So I think the Fed will not be moved easily, and it has a justification that it's moved to an outcome-based monetary framework. So it's not good. I agree with him in the short term. You know, Becky, it is incredible. There are people now talking that the ECB, which is way behind the Fed in terms of excuses for normalizing, may start talking about QE taper before the Fed. The Bank of Canada has started. The Bank of England has started. So I think the Fed will hold on to this conviction for a long time. It is in our collective hope that they are right, because if they're not right, then it's not good either for the markets or the economy if they are that late.
Yeah, if they're that late, then you talk about the spiral and thinking back to days that haven't been here in decades, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of two things are going to happen, or both will happen, is the market will start getting nervous, and then the Fed may have to slam on the brakes. The last thing we need is the Fed slamming on the brakes, because experience shows when that happens, we end up with a recession. That's why we should all be encouraging the Fed to move from I'm not thinking about thinking to start thinking. Start asking yourself, why is it that you can dismiss all this evidence, both from a top-down and a bottom-up, and hold on to a conviction? You should be more open-minded, have a bit more humility about the fact that we don't understand well supply bottlenecks. And economists typically lag when it comes to supply bottlenecks.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.